everyone, to Unbound, the Bay Area Book Festival's virtual conversations. I'm Chloe Veltman, arts and culture reporter at KQED in San Francisco. I want to start by acknowledging the long-time partnership between this festival and KQED. I'm moderating today's event titled Unplugging in a Virtual World. Joining me is Tiffany Shlain, Emmy-nominated filmmaker and author of 24/6, The Power of Unplugging One Day a Week. Thanks, Tiffany, for joining me today.
I'm so happy to be here.
Tiffany's book about the importance of getting off our screens for one day a week came out last fall. It's an interesting time to think about unplugging, given this moment during the coronavirus pandemic, as we're taping this interview, when many of us are finding ourselves even more tethered to screens because we aren't really able to do things like meet people in person, go out to our workplaces or schools for most of us, or hang out in a bar or a cultural venue. So first, we'll hear a bit more about the book from Tiffany, and then we'll have a discussion. So turning it over to you, Tiffany, take it away.
Thank you, Chloe. It's so great to be here. I'm from the Bay Area. I love that the Bay Area Book Festival happened, and I'm glad that we're still able to make it happen this way, doing literary adapting to this very extraordinary circumstance that we're living in. Which actually, this moment we're in feels very similar to a moment that I was personally in around 11 years ago. Actually, this Monday is going to be the 11-year anniversary of my father's death. And what happened was that my father died of brain cancer. My dad was also an author. His name was Leonard Shlain, and he was loved by the Bay Area bookstores and readers. Anyways, we were very close, and he died of brain cancer just within days of my daughter being born. And it really felt like one of those moments where life was grabbing me by the shoulders and saying, focus on what matters. And my husband and I decided with our kids to turn off screens one day a week for what we call our technology Shabbat. So that was over 10 years ago. It's been the best thing that I've ever done in my life, just in terms of a practice that keeps giving and brings such balance and meaning and so many things, which I'll go into. And I should also tell you, I love technology. I'm not anti-tech. I mean, the other 6 days I'm in the web. And this is even, obviously before the web. I founded the Webby Awards. My background is that in my 20s, I founded the Webbies. I've always been very excited about the potential of technology to connect us in all of these new ways. And really spent my career either, running the Webby Awards, or I've made a lot of films about the potential of technology. What's the potential? And also, what's the curse? What do we need to be wrestling with? And what I was wrestling with 10 years ago at this very dramatic moment in my life was I was feeling distracted all the time. I just felt like I couldn't get a complete thought out without my phone buzzing or some notification happening. And I just felt like I was in a constant state of being distracted. And I didn't like it. And so I think really what I was seeking by doing this one day without screens is just some time to think, some time to connect in an authentic way, and just to turn the screens off. It was too much. So, and I should also tell you, I am Jewish, but I'm not a religious Jew. I'm more of a humanistic Jew, secular Jew. But I love rituals. I love a lot of things I love about being Jewish, the humor, the food, but the rituals. And a lot of the ideas of Shabbat, which is also called the Sabbath, is this concept of a day of rest. And so we started doing that 10 years ago. So Friday night, well, first of all, we make challah in the morning. We make bread, which has to rise all day. And then we usually make a beautiful meal and invite people over. And it's the best meal of the week because no one has their phones out, and we have this wonderful meal. And then the next day it's no screens, and it's literally our family's favorite day of the week. Our daughter is now 17, our older daughter, and our younger daughter is almost 11, which a lot of people can't believe that they would love it as much as we do, but we do. It's really just a day filled with things we love to do. Now, that was all before the pandemic. And then, of course, the last 2 months, we've all had to be online so much more. And I do feel like it's a very similar moment for like the whole world in terms of, whereas I felt life was grabbing me by the shoulders and saying, focus on what's important. I feel like right now, all of us are being grabbed by the shoulders and saying, focus on what's important. What matters? What's important? Your health, your family, enough money to buy food, cooking food, being grateful, helping others. You know, there's all these fundamental lessons that I really felt like I spend my time thinking about more on my tech Shabbat than others. So a lot of people have asked, you know, because we're on screens so much more. It's a lifeline right now. Screens are the way that we connect. Like, we will often connect with our family members from all over the country on Zoom before we turn off the screens for our tech Shabbat. And that brings me to my second point, which is that so many people have said, well, are you still doing your tech Shabbat now that we're, you know, in shelter in place? And it just kind of always stuns me, because am I doing it? It's like, it's my saving grace. There's so many benefits to it, especially now. They feel like magnified the benefits, because I've been so stressed. We all have been, about what's happening, what's going to happen. And it's just, it allows me to take one foot in front of the other, 1 week at a time. I look forward to something every week. Like, it's really weird because I'm a big planner and now we can't make any plans, but every week I know, okay, now today's Friday. It's Shabbat. We're going to make a lovely meal. We're going to turn off the screens. It feels different than all the other days. I'm going to sleep well. I always sleep much better on my Friday nights. So I feel like doing a tech Shabbat or a screen-free day, or whatever you want to call it, feels like so much more beneficial during the pandemic, when everything is blurring together, time is blurring together, work and social and everything's blurring together. We're on the news so much more, which is like we're bathing our bodies in cortisol and stress. And of course, there's so many beautiful things about the web right now. I mean, a couple months ago, I actually did this show at MoMA in New York called Dear Human. And it was really pulled from a lot of ideas in my book, 24/6. And I was worried that, whereas my early optimism with the web, that it was going to connect us and collaborate and all these things in new ways, that the tech industry and the business model of manipulating our attention was starting to bring out the worst in humanity. So all the social media was making us compare ourselves, and FOMO and polarization. And that really was a lot of the crux of what my show is about at MoMA. But I ended the show and said, what could it take to bring the web back to the web we want? What could we all be focusing on together? And that show at MoMA was February 15th, 2020. I got home, and of course, just within weeks, the whole country, different parts of the world shut down. And I'm seeing the web being used in so many incredible, miraculous ways. So I have renewed faith in the web. I have renewed faith in humanity, if we choose to look at this as this huge opportunity and lesson. And I'm worried, like everyone else. My brother's a doctor who's been, working at the front lines of COVID, and that's been intense and wonderful, because I'm really proud of him. And just all the food donation coordination I've seen, and micro donations to help people, and GoFundMe campaigns. And there's so many ways that the web is just rising to the occasion. It's allowing us to bring out the best of humanity, the best of our human strengths. But we shouldn't be on it all the time. That it is even more so. I think we're so craving human contact right now from other people. My biggest hope is that when we emerge from this period, we're going to finally be together and not be staring at our phones all the time. Because pre-pandemic, that's what it was like. You're walking down the street, everyone's staring at their phones. People are out for dinner, they're all staring at their phones. A group of teenagers together, they're all like staring at their phones. That maybe we're going to be so hungry for true human connection after this, that maybe we'll put down our phones. That would be a great thing that would come out of this. But the biggest ritual that I say in the book, and I'll share with you some of the benefits, because in the book I really go deep on the neuroscience and the historical reference and the psychology of why it's so good, and so many of the benefits that happen from us unplugging one day a week. But I think right now we have so much time, so much time on our hands. If you have the privilege of being able to be at home and you're not an essential worker, and you're thinking, how can I take this time and have something come out of it that would be really good and sustaining for the rest of my life? I really think that integrating this ritual of a day without screens, and I'll tell you why I think a day. So this is an idea that's over 3,000 years old. Some people call it the Sabbath. It's called Shabbat, different words for it. Every different religion has some form of a day of rest. They just right now in our modern society, only the most observant and religious people in that faith will do it. So the Seventh-day Adventist Christians do a full day of Sabbath. Orthodox Jews do a full day of a day of rest. But I never really met anyone except the one Orthodox Jew that I knew. I live in California, I'm not in New York, that did it. But other than that, if people do Shabbat, which I have many friends that are Jewish also, they will maybe light the candles or do a nice dinner occasionally. But most people don't do a full day of rest. But what I've experienced by doing this with my family is the power is in the full day of rest. That there is some serious wisdom that it takes a whole day to truly reset and reboot and turn off the outside world so you can kind of tune into yourself and the people you might live with. But if you're alone, I still highly recommend it. And to your kids, and really go a little more inward. Because right now we're online all the time. We're reacting to the news. We're Zooming with our family. We're connecting with our friends. We're like on social media. We're in a constant state of reacting and connecting. There's a lot of good happening right now too. And I don't want to discount that. But what I find that a lot of times on Saturday is I do my very best thinking. I reflect. I mean, I think, and I think we've created a society and culture that doesn't value reflection because we leave no space for it. So, I do a lot of writing on Saturday, so the Friday is very social with a dinner with friends and family. Even with our family now, we're still like a lot of talking about the week. Everything's about the week, which is a very manageable way to think about time, by the way. Some great wisdom in that as well. But Saturday, I do a lot of writing, journaling, and doing nothing, which is a really important thing to also be able to do, is to do nothing. We value so much productivity and optimizing every second of our lives these days. I'm going to walk and listen to a podcast and wash the dishes and learn a new language and whatever it is. There's a value in just letting your whole soul lie fallow. Even in farming, every 7 years, you're supposed to let the earth lie fallow, no new crops. So every 7 days, I also think you need to let your brain and your soul lie fallow so you can have the necessary nutrients to grow and to build things. And one of the benefits we talk about of the many is that Ken and I feel so much more productive after giving ourselves a full day of rest. So I don't think we're ever really giving ourselves a full day of rest right now. Even our like leisure relaxing, if you're posting it on social media and you have to write a witty caption and check how it did, and suddenly that starts to feel like work. And the other thing I've noticed after doing this for 10 years is I'm a filmmaker. I run a film studio in San Francisco, and most of my time I am making films. This was my first book. So I'm always trying to put myself in the most creative flow state. Like every creative person is like, what can you do? It used to be traveling. I don't think I would be doing a lot of that right. Anyways, traveling is very inspiring. But if I look back on the last 10 years, I have my best ideas on Saturday. That's when I always have my breakthroughs. And there is actual neuroscience behind this, that during the week, you're getting all this new input and stimulation, but it's when you are daydreaming or washing the dishes or taking a shower, going for a run, that your mind starts putting things together in unusual ways. It's called the default mode network. And that's usually where I think creativity comes from, is unusual connections happening. I always have my best ideas. So Ken's my husband. He's a professor at UC Berkeley. I should do a shout out because this is like, I think usually held in Berkeley as one of its core places. But we feel so much more productive by truly taking a day off. I feel much more creative. I have problems sleeping. That really just started. I mean, I'm 50. In my 40s, I started having problems sleeping. I always am able to sleep on Friday nights. It's the deepest sleep of the week. So another benefit. I generally think I'm more patient, and I'm a pretty impatient person. So long term, I know whenever I want to kind of slow things down and be more patient, it's Saturday. I think it's really good to teach our kids how to be bored, how to not need to be stimulated every second. I mean, there's so much research. I would say like boredom is the runway to creativity. So if you're feeling bored, great. Something really creative is about to happen. It's just like wait in your seat. It's going to be so exciting because there's always going to be a creative idea that comes right after that. So it's good to teach our kids boredom, and ourselves. And, every second, if you're just flipping your wrist on your phone to distract yourself, which right now during the pandemic, a lot of good time, we need distraction also, but not at every moment. And every in-between moment or every pause moment, just always turning to our phone or a screen to be entertained or distracted or productive, it's good to just leave space to just be. And I find that I do that mostly on our tech Shabbats. But it has really led to practices I do the other 6 days. Like I no longer look at my phone when I wake up because that's my most creative thinking time. And working on the book 24/6, I really recognize like that's my sweet spot to write. I get up at 5 a.m. before the kids would get up, and I'd write from 5 to 7. And then everyone got up, and then the whole world came at me with emails, and then it was over. But if I can get those 2 hours of writing done, but what I really notice is when I wake up, if you just look at your phone right when you wake up, and I do use my phone as an alarm clock. I've tried many other alarm clocks. That's the thing that works for me, whatever. But I keep it on airplane mode in the morning. I don't turn it on. So I come down, I have my coffee, drinking my coffee, and I'm writing. What am I thinking about? What am I grateful for? What's this day going to be like? And it's just like 15 minutes, but it's so nice to start my day with where I am instead of where the world, instead of like a stressful email, a stressful news headline, or some social media thing. It's my own framing of the day. And before I go to sleep, I have my nighttime rituals because I have problem sleeping. I take a bath, I read, and I write in a journal again about what happened in the day, what was great about the day, what's something I wish I did differently about the day, and what do I hope for tomorrow. So it's like this sandwich to my day that doesn't involve the phone. Super important. I also, in our family, we do no screens at the table when we're eating, unless lately during the pandemic, if we have a Zoom with family members, but then the screens go away. And I've been trying to do a 1-hour walk every day without a screen. So in the book, I talk about, all these things you can do the other 6 days, but then the plethora of benefits that happen from this one complete day off. And a lot of people have said to me, because now I've been out with the book for like 6 months, and it's been really fun because, a lot of people read it, like it's changed my life, or I didn't think my kids were going to love it and they love it. I didn't think my partner was going to love it. And I talk about a lot of strategies, how to get people in your life ready for you to do this, because you might be psyched to do this, but maybe your husband or your wife or your partner or your kids. And I talk a lot about the best way to approach it, because it's not like we're going to turn off screens for a day. That will not go over very well. It's all about how you position it. If you say to them, what do you wish we had more? What do you wish we did more together? And pretty much make the day filled with that. That's why it's our family's favorite day of the week. It's a day of joy. It's a day of cooking, of napping, of reading, of biking, of just nothing can involve a screen. And I even have a whole section at the back of the book, fun things to do that don't involve screens, which I thought it was funny that I even had to include it, but I did. So I think during the pandemic, I know everyone's saying I'm so exhausted from Zooms, or I'm on the screen. I've got carpal tunnel for my first time. I get shooting pains in my forearms because I'm sitting in so many positions in my house on my screen in a weird way. So we're just on screen so much more, but think about it as even more of a reason that you should create space. And I think a true day a week, and it's thousands of years old, it's about one whole day a week, to really reset. It has brought me such comfort when I've been so anxious during the weeks. I just find like I completely, it's not, you really do get to shut out the outside world for a day, just for a day, and just like think about what you're grateful for, which is always good. It kind of quiets all the anxiety voice, all the things you do have instead of the things you don't have or you might lose in the future with this pandemic. And it's just brought an amazing sense of balance and resetting for me personally. So I was excited about the book before, because it's like, I'd be like, oh my gosh, I have this ancient, free, simple practice that's totally changed my life, and anyone can do it. And you don't have to believe in wherever you're coming from. I have a lot of Christians and doing it, and people write to me, they're like, it's an idea from Judaism, but it is, I have great respect for people that believe in religion, but that is not where I'm coming from. I come from it in I actually don't like the word secular, but I really do come from it as a secular practice. And I want to liberate it from religion and make it just a practice, just like yoga and meditation has brought great things to people from all different backgrounds. And I really think the concept of a tech Shabbat, a day without screens, can really bring much joy and meaning and balance and peace to people, especially right now during the pandemic. And at that point, this point. I would love to bring Chloe back in because I'm so excited to talk to her and just hear what questions you might have had about the book or anything I've said.
Thank you, Tiffany, for sharing so much great information from your book. I'm curious, I know you are a non-practicing Jew, actually, as I am myself.
Oh, are you?
Yeah.
Your name did not give that away at all.
Veltman? Yeah, I think that's a Jewish name. It's an old Dutch name, but my relatives all come from Eastern Europe. And anyway, so yeah, that was kind of my upbringing too. I'm just curious about how Tech Shabbat, as you practice it today with your family, may compare to the Shabbat traditions, whatever they might have been when you were growing up.
Okay, I didn't grow up with Shabbat, and I'm so glad you brought that up because there's ways that our practice differs from like people that are really truly observing Shabbat. Someone once said to me, a rabbi said, "You're the most religious, non-religious person I know because I never break. I always do Tech Shabbat, and so I'm very observant in my Tech Shabbat. But in the and I do a lot of similar rituals. So I did not grow up with Shabbat, but my husband did, and they always had a beautiful Friday night meal, which is one of the most beautiful. We set and we do that too. We set the table. We bring fresh cut flowers. We make homemade challah. It's a beautiful meal. We also do that. If you were a really observant Orthodox Jew, you're not supposed to create. You're not even supposed to write. I think I told you I do my best writing on journaling on Shabbat, but
you're not supposed to turn on the lights. I don't think.
Not supposed to turn on lights. So for me, it was really about trying to take the essence and the kernel of Shabbat, which I think is about presence, gratitude, joy, family, sanctuary of home, cooking, really being present. That was to me what I was trying to do. And I feel like screens take away so much of those things that was how I interpret it. Did you grow up with Shabbat?
Yeah, I mean, loosely, certainly not as a very, very much a weekly practice. Some of my my parents' siblings, my aunties in particular, were more into it, so we would do that with them. But yeah, I mean, I'm curious. I mean, obviously, some of the impulse for this idea comes from your husband Ken. But the mindfulness practice, the desire to be with family, that sort of thing, was that modeled for you when you were growing up in other ways, if not with a Friday night dinner? Was there what kind of rituals were around the sorts of ideas that you want to manifest in that Shabbat that you do now? Were they present in your youth, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I, growing up, my parents got divorced. So it was actually, I think in many ways, doing a Shabbat, and before they got divorced, there was a lot of rituals. We bagel lox and cream cheese every Sunday. We always went to the movies every Sunday night. And then when I was about 8, they got divorced, which was really a hard period for me. And I think in many ways, and I do write about this in the book, when I really went deep on the book, why this ritual is so important to me is I think a lot of ways I understand how important ritual is for family and what happens when that breaks. And I'm sure if I was on a therapy couch, like a lot of my understanding of how profound it's been for our family, although I think it can also be very meaningful if you are not married or without kids. But for me, it has brought such a important ritual that ties us back together each week. Like during the week, we're off doing our separate things. And then on Friday night to Saturday night, it's like we knit ourselves back together in this really connected way. Yeah. And it's the closest I feel to everyone in the family is on Friday night to Saturday night. Okay. And there's Bluma. It's okay. We're on Zoom. That's my daughter, Bluma. You want to say hi? It's okay.
Hi,
we're doing a recording. Chloe's saying hi, Bluma.
Hi, that's my my grandmother's name. She's not around anymore.
That's her grandmother's name. Aww. Hi, Bluma. We're doing for the Bay Area Book Festival. That's
hello,
Bluma.
Hi. Yeah, I know a little bit about you from reading your mom's book.
Well, it's fun. I'll tell you one thing is that, in the book I talk about how Bluma and I in Odessa, we make challah every week. And as soon as the pandemic started, whatever that was 9 weeks ago for us, when we started sheltering, we decided to do our challah baking on Zoom. So now every week we bake challah with anywhere from 50 to 150 people on Zoom in from our kitchen every week. And Bluma is the kneader. And today, we bring in guest chefs. It's been such a fun part of the pandemic. And there was this funny moment today where somebody was asking about the dough was not moist enough. And we were saying about, how keep kneading. That's how you get the dough right. And it's so symbolic to this period we're in right now is we just have to keep kneading, kneading the dough. And it's so much about processing what's going on. And I think that a lot of learning the great lessons from this period is about being present for what's going on and not just living in a state of distraction from what's going on, which is very easy to do. You could be on Netflix and reading the news and scrolling this whole period, but there's a real opportunity to also really be present to what's happening right now. That was a very long answer, but
that's fine. I really enjoyed meeting Bloomer and hearing a little bit about where some of this idea sort of generates from within you, right? Yeah. So apart from taking your challah making onto Zoom, I'm curious about how the stay-at-home orders and the coronavirus pandemic has changed your tech Shabbat practice.
Yeah, we don't have people over on Friday night. That we really, we miss that. It's actually, I've loved it because we're really having wonderful conversations as a family, whereas normally we have all these new people here or family and friends here. But I feel like that happens in the Zoom challah bake is very social. You know, we're baking with people from, today we had somebody from Berlin and Italy and then all these people from the United States. So that part was very social, but so we don't have people over, which is a big difference. But the Saturday part is pretty similar. I mean, we've managed to do it when our kids have had sports and we've had to go to a field or something or a basketball court when we're doing it. But really, we try to not make many plans on Saturday. So not a lot of plans are happening right now. So that way they feel very similar. And then at 5 p.m. on Saturday night, the girls go back online. We go back online. We used to go out to the movies and dinner. That's not happening. We go upstairs now. But we're all excited to go back online too. And that's an important component, is that turning off everything one day a week also lets you reappreciate technology in a whole new way when you go back on, because it's this miraculous tool. Like, thank God we have the web right now. And I think by living without it for one day, it helps you reappreciate it in this new way when you go back on. So there's kind of a dual benefit each week. Each week I can't wait to turn it off. So tonight's Friday. I can't wait to turn it off. And then I can't wait. And then I'm usually excited to know what's happened in the world, and everything exists without you. That's a really good thing to know. So people always say, well, what if people can't get in touch with you? And I should mention, we do have a landline. And that's a really good thing to have in California for earthquakes, for fires, for lots of natural disasters also. But if somebody really needs to get in touch with us, they will call us on that landline. But it hardly ever rings, because Saturday is really about us not going outward. It's more inward. And I think all week long we're text and calls and Facebooks and Zooms. And I feel really good to have that boundary of not being available to everybody and everything for one day.
I know you alluded to this a little bit in the presentation you gave today, but I'd just like to dig in a bit more, because, I mean, you know, obviously some people would say that the pandemic makes taking a tech Shabbat more important than ever before. You're among those people. But how would you respond to those that think that taking a day off from screens may have been untenable for them before COVID-19 and seems ludicrous, if not downright impossible now, given the fact that so many activities we might have done away from screens in the past now necessarily require us to be on screens?
Mm-hmm. I hear that. I guess I would just ask the person. I mean, I think to me, it's really valuing time with or without a pandemic to listen to your own thoughts for a day and read in a different. I actually do a lot of reading on Shabbat, and I read in such a different way than I do during the week. But I feel like, I mean, that would be the same argument I would get if people couldn't imagine turning them off before. But it feels so good. And actually, a lot of people that have read my book that are now doing it, I think people are scared to do it. But I think if you filled the day with, you know, I'm going to write, I'm going to read, I'm going to cook, I'm going to take a long walk. I'm going to play music. I'm going to do some watercoloring, like just all those things. I would just think that you don't realize how much you need a break. Like we weren't designed to being on this much. And even, you know, like when there's a new baby in the world, they always say, don't overstimulate it. Like take it, it's being overstimulated. And I think we are living in such a state of overstimulation all the time that we forgot what it feels like to just, to not have it. And it feels so rejuvenating and so nourishing. And all the things I mentioned that I think I would just offer to anyone that said that to just try it. Mm-hmm. And to do some planning ahead of time. Like it's not like really think about like put out all those things that you want to think deeply about. Like I really also hope that I watched a documentary about the Spanish flu and my favorite parts were just the journal entries of people during that period. And I think it's such an opportunity to really write about how we're feeling right now and what we're thinking about. And it's really important to create space for that. So I would just say to try it. And the other thing I would say is if you are going to try it, which I kind of really walk you through in the book, to look at your calendar for 4 weeks of trying it. We got a lot of time right now, but it is about the repetition of the ritual.
Sure.
Like some people say, oh, I would go on vacation. I turned off my phone for a week or a couple of days. I'm like, that's great. But to me, the tagline of the book is the power of unplugging 1 day a week. So it's really about the ritual. And every week I know I'm going to get a full reset.
Okay. Thought experiment for you. If everyone in the world practiced tech Shabbat, how might the way in which countries and cities around the globe have responded to the coronavirus and economic fallout, how might that response be different if every single person were practicing this?
Oh, okay. You landed in a different way. Well, I was first thinking, I was going to say it'd be so good for the planet if for one day we weren't all consuming and every day of the week. But I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
But I think what you're saying, but like, well, how would we coordinate efforts? Are you thinking about that or?
I'm just thinking, how might this whole thing, which frankly has been a bit of a mess in some countries more than others in the way that it's been handled, if, say, our leaders and everyone else were doing this practice, how might it...
okay, I have an answer for that.
Our response.
Well, I think I'm not a fan of our president at all. I think he has no prefrontal cortex. And if he spent a day thinking instead of being reactive and not truly listening to the scientists or like, I think what's happening is we didn't see a plan in this country well executed. And I mean, that's such a bigger issue about our country, but I have often thought, what if everyone took a Shabbat? What if everyone did something on the same day? Mm-hmm. What if everyone was with their families and reflected on and didn't consume and went a little inward for 1 day? I think we'd have more thoughtful responses to so many things. But certainly, I think there was a lot of like at the beginning, it was just like running around and not having a coordinated responsive effort. But, you know, of course, like hospitals can't do it, right? If they're taking care of patients, they're not going to turn off their screens and they're monitoring people. So I, of course, would not think that. But I think the majority of people that are online 24/7, do they really need to be online 24/7? I mean, right now we're in an emergency situation with a lot of doctors and essential workers and healthcare workers. But I do love that thought experiment. I might like write about that a little bit more or think about it a little bit more tomorrow because it's a great question.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose really when I read your book, I for me, it's not really about, the screen thing, honestly, at a deeper level. I mean, you're talking about a mindfulness, a state of mindfulness, a series of mindfulness practices of which, turning off your screen 1 day a week is a manifestation of this kind of larger idea, right? And people can get at it through all sorts of techniques from yoga to meditation to journaling, right? Now, of course, I understand why you focus on the screens because it is the sort of the sickness of our time, shall we say.
Yes, yes.
But I can't help but think that beyond the sort of the obvious idea that obviously, we have frontline workers who kind of have to be on their screens or whatever it might be, that certainly if everyone had and were still to take that moment to stop and think and do all those mindful practices, that maybe things might be a little different. I don't know. Obviously, I'm not saying it's a solution to the problem at large, but it might have helped a little bit. But anyway.
Because I think, I love what you're saying, because it's a really bit about, we're so reactive. I mean, that the internet is built to be like a amygdala response network. React. It's not about like think and turn it off and like think about that. Process, be still, like think about what that means, or a couple steps ahead. It's so immediate, which is why it's so sexy and exciting and fun. But that there's I want to live in a world that values deep thinking and long-term thinking and planning. And right now is a perfect example. We need some big, like, coordinated effort here in our globe and our country. That's not happening.
Okay. So there are obviously tremendous benefits to not looking down at a screen all day. But I want to talk a little bit about artificial reality, because there's developments in AR and artificial reality are likely to transform the way, frankly, that we receive digital information in probably the not too distant future, probably making the screens that you hate so much obsolete or nearly obsolete. So I'm wondering, and so, our information will be more ambient, and you certainly, and sort of there in a lot of different places, and it won't be about looking at a screen. So I'm wondering, how might these developments sculpt your thinking going forwards, if you were to write, another version of this book, or an updated version, or whatever?
Yeah, I thought about that. Like, I added in the intro and the extra, like, it's not going to be screens soon. Pretty much, we're all looking down. That was my big issue with everyone's walking down the street and looking down all the time and not looking at where they are. And I hope when we emerge from this that people are going to be present with each other when they're together. But it's not going to be screens at some point. It's going to be augmented reality. It could be on your glasses. There'll be a screen that I couldn't see, or contact lenses. And so, but I'll still know. I mean, even right now, like, I'm trying to remember to look at the camera, but I want to look at you. I want to look into your eyes, but I'm like, I have to look above at the camera, or else it doesn't look like I'm looking at the viewer and the audience, which I wish I was in the room with. So this is so funky right now that we can't make real eye contact on the laptop. Right. Which is slightly off. Like, we're talking right now, but I think that's one of the reasons why Zoom is so exhausting, is there's something kind of slightly off, and you're always trying to readjust to kind of homeostasis on real connection, but it's not there. But to go back to your question, the screens at some point might be gone, but I will still need our whole family to turn, whatever you want to call it, the ether, the web off, so we are not getting input from everywhere. And I think that's what it really is that if you're just constantly getting input, you can't really understand the input in your own mind and your own soul. And I worry about when you can't see it,
harder to police.
Exactly. It's not put your screen down and phone down. It's like, can you just turn the whole web off? But that will happen for sure.
Mm-hmm. Alexa and Google Home and Cortana and all these other voice-activated digital devices can be equally, I think, if not more invasive than screens. And, there are enormous privacy concerns around them, for one thing. And nevertheless, we have 1 in 4 American adults owning a smart speaker today. So why are you actually okay with people using these voice technologies during a tech Shabbat?
I have struggled with that. I mean, actually, you can see in my, I did this background. I'm sorry, there's my daughter's walking in and out of the screen, but over there is our record player. Oh, yeah. Can you see that? Mm-hmm. Which we sometimes use on Shabbat. But, we cook a lot on Shabbat, and we often use the timer. And then sometimes we'll say, play Billie Holiday, or, we have certain music we listen to a lot on Shabbat. And we have made that exception. And I've thought about it, because it is an exception that we make. And I think it's because it's not pulling us out of what we're doing. It's kind of augmenting us cooking, that we have a verbal cooking timer or music. But that's a little bit of a gray area for sure. And I have more and more, I remember my husband, he was given like a video version of Alexa. I'm like, no, keep it out of the house. And then the more I that might leave. I mean, we've had a lot of conversations about it internally, and I have been asked about it a lot in the book. I'm like, yeah, that is our one exception. And I know it's gray, but for us, it's just kind of helping us cook. And it's not like this outside world interjecting with us. But it's gray. I mean, I think everyone is going to, like, a friend of mine who teaches me guitar was like, could I still tune my guitar? Because my tuning app is on my phone. And like, if that's the one exception she needs to make, Or right now in a pandemic, if you said, you know, I could do this, but I want to make sure to Zoom my kids or my mother or my aunt a couple times. And like, we're in an extraordinary situation. I would say yes. I would just say that what I have found is I like the boundary. I'm not using screens today. I like being like, oh, I want to look that up. Oh, I can't. I guess I'm going to walk over, see if my bookshelf could offer me any guidance. Or I like that. I mean, boundaries are good, constraints are good, and I find ultimately they're liberating. I feel liberated by having a strict boundary of no screens. It just frees me. It frees me to be in a different way one day a week.
Got it. So I want to take issue or challenge you on one thing you said today, and that I've also heard you say in other interviews you've done. The idea of the coronavirus renewing your faith in the web, in the internet, and to the extent that we are taking more time to connect with people and doing things like making and sharing art virtually. I mean, I agree that may be true, but I mean, honestly, during the coronavirus, disinformation and fake news have skyrocketed. Think about the digital divide that I think is being witnessed in unprecedented ways, especially for, say, kids going to school, you know, who some of whom don't have access to the internet and to screens and are severely disadvantaged. Not to mention immigrant populations. So I'm just curious, like, why this unwavering faith all of a sudden in this?
Well, I think it wouldn't be, I think what I say is renewed faith, because I guess 3 months ago, I was like, oh my gosh, all it's doing is exacerbating our human weaknesses, comparison, jealousy, FOMO, polarization. Then the pandemic happened, and I saw creativity happen in such a beautiful way with these online collaborations. I agree with you. I also saw the digital divide issue finally be talked about. New York right now, only 29% of households don't have Wi-Fi. So all those kids are not being, I mean, I completely agree that the digital divide issue, it felt like it was something we talked about a lot during the early days of the Webbies. Then it kind of went away. And now finally, I've seen so many important articles about it. So, okay, how do we get everyone online that needs to be online? How do we build more of the web that we want? I'm also fearful. I am worried about the tracing software, that's just going to give the government more power. And then that becomes a scarier thing. So I'm not completely like, oh, the web, everything's great now. But I was really much more like the web is bringing out the worst 3 months ago. And now I'm like, the web is bringing out a lot of good in humanity right now. I mean, I have cried and from laughter and from beautiful things more in the last 2 months over things I've seen on the web. People have shared on social media, instead of it being like, look at what party I'm at, it's like, look at the food donation I'm helping with, or you can help this friend's restaurant, or let's collaborate on let's try to recreate this painting, or I don't know, I just seen so much more of that. So I think I feel like this is a new chance to look at the web anew, at its potential, fix the issue of the digital divide, and really think clearly about all the power we're giving to government and technology companies about tracking us, and what are the implications of that. And we have a lot of time to think about all these things if we choose to, because a lot of us aren't doing our normal jobs right now. How do we take this moment and think, let's take the web to what we want it to be? I think it's an opportunity, because I was kind of feeling like we were just all like just being sucked into this way we were using it 3 months ago. And it changed for me.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly changed, I think, for so many of us, right? One thing I wonder too is about the idea of taking yourself away from screens for one day a week. I mean, I feel like for me, at least in my life, the best practices that I can have, the ones that help me the most, are the ones where, rather than going, you know, cold turkey for an entire day and being like bonkers the rest of the week on it, having, you know, every day has these boundaries for me. Or, I mean, I don't know, maybe that's just a privilege thing. I don't know. Or just trying to get the journaling in a little bit every day, and a little tiny little bit of the meditation and all those other things that you talk about in your book that are so important to protect that. I mean, to what extent is it important to integrate this stuff so that it's not just let's go cold turkey for a day, but let's try and have this woven through the fabric of our lives so that we're not on 24 hours a day for those other 6 days.
I did mention to you, I do these other rituals the other 6 days that I talk about in the book, like the journaling in the morning, in the bed, I don't look at the phone, and no screens at dinner. So I do integrate throughout the week micro interventions is what I kind of call them. But again, what I feel like the complete power of this practice is this full day. So I think it's like in tandem, because it ripples out. every week I almost get to reset the addiction if I feel like, oh, I was on too much, I was reading too much bad news and I did not feel good, and next week I'm gonna not do that. So it gives me that bigger perspective on how to integrate it throughout the week. And then I do all these mini things, like you said. I agree, because it's not like I want to be binging 6 days and then one day out. That's why actually I don't like the word digital detox, and because it implies you could completely live without it, which you can't. But throughout the week, if you can have a healthier relationship to it, and then this one full day seems to give you that perspective that you lose every week.
Okay. All right. I've got to ask you about the ukulele.
Where is my? It's right here.
Yeah.
I got a ukulele right there. Hey, Glenn, will you hand me the plug for the computer? Sorry, I'm just about to get out of juice.
You're a musician, and I wonder what some of your favorite tunes are to play when you're at home on Tech Shabbat. Maybe you'd like to play for us a little something.
Oh my gosh, I have to tune. That's such a great question. Well, it's not like I'm an expert. That's what I like about the ukulele. It's very simple to pick up. And wait, let me just plug this in. Wait 1 second.
Yeah, take your time.
Another one.
Where are you going with it? I'm giving it that time.
Okay, sorry. So my whole household there, all the best there. Okay, I don't know if I am actually going to play, but because I'd have to tune it and everything. But what I'll tell you is that I play lately. A song I've been playing a lot is by Buffalo Springfield from the '60s. Is Something Happening Here, and actually, what's the name of it? But my whole family, Bluma plays electric, Ken plays electric, learning electric. Oh, For What It's Worth by Buffalo Springfield. I have been playing that song a lot during this period, and it's very poignant. It was kind of a 60s protest song, but there's a lot of nice links. And then Odessa, my older daughter, plays acoustic guitar. But, that's also about just putting your mind in a different mode. I think a lot of what I'm talking about is when you're playing music, you're not thinking about anything else except the music. And it's really good to put your mind in a different mode a little bit every day. And what I think is a whole day every week. It helps everything to just get out of your head, to get out of the web, to get out of the phone and just exist in a different way. I think that's the biggest message that the ukulele teaches me.
Well, on that musical note, I think we'll probably leave it there. I'd like to say a huge thank you to Tiffany Shlain for joining us. We're going to post a link to where you can buy 24/6 and have it shipped directly to you. And if you want to find out more about KQED's great virtual events program, please visit kqed.org/events. I'm Chloe Veltman, and you've been watching Bay Area Book Festival Unbound.